The biggest problem I have with the theory that Rey is Luke's daughter, or most Rey theories for that matter, is that they fail to give a good answer as to why she ended up being left on Jakku in the care of Unkar Plutt. Of all the places in the galaxy, and of all the beings, why there and why with him? Now, as you may know, I'm a pretty big fan of the theory that she was simply born on Jakku and left with Unkar by her parents for lack of a better option. But for the sake of this video, and because there's a very good chance I'm wrong about her being born on Jakku, I'm going to assume that the most popular theory out there is the right one, that she is the daughter of Luke Skywalker and has been left on Jakku by somebody. But who and why? Are there good answers to both these questions? Now, some suggest it was Luke himself that left his daughter there to toughen her up, or something along those lines, to give her an experience similar to the life he led on Tatooine. And to those people I like to ask, would you leave your own daughter on Jakku with Unkar Plutt to toughen her up, no matter what kind of childhood you had? In a situation where she could very easily die if she couldn't hack it? Of course not, and neither would Luke. So I highly doubt it was him unless there was some reason that we cannot even begin to guess at as to why he would leave her there, which I suppose is possible. The same would go for whoever Rey's mother is being the one who left her there. Why, if she cares for and loves her daughter, would she leave her in a situation like that? And even not knowing who Rey's mother is, I think it's safe to assume she wouldn't leave her there without a very good reason that we, again, couldn't even begin to guess at. Well, then again, maybe there was a very good reason why it had to be Jakku that Luke left her on, and that's because something about the planet masks Rey's presence from someone who may be looking for her, like Snoke for example. However, I'd have to imagine that being at Luke's side, even with someone like Snoke after her or them, is still a safer place than being on Jakku basically alone or with Unkar Plutt. And even if this is the case, that he left her on Jakku because Snoke would never be able to find her there, why not find someone more capable than Unkar to look after her? Surely he could have found someone he trusted with his daughter's life more than that guy, right? You may immediately say, well, what about Lor San Tekka, who is on Jakku and could be like an Obi-Wan to her, watching her and keeping her safe from a distance? Well, there's a couple issues with that. First, why watch her and keep her safe from a distance? Why not be personally the one who raises her or watches out for her? Why give her to Unkar Plutt instead? We also know that Lor San Tekka travels quite a bit, that he hasn't been on Jakku for the last X number of years, however long it's been since Rey was left there. He's actually been exploring the galaxy as a member of the Church of the Force for most of his life, visiting places sacred to the Jedi and the like, and only went to Jakku to meet Poe Dameron and to give him the map to Luke. Also, how would Lor San Tekka be able to keep Rey safe even if he had been watching out for her the whole time? He's not a Jedi like Obi-Wan was, and as far as we know, he's more or less just an explorer, not some type of warrior in any respect. Others suggest perhaps it was Ben Solo or Kylo Ren that hid her there, but even if he would take her and hide her, we run into the same problem. Why Jakku and why with Unkar Plutt? It's also important to note that thanks to the book Bloodline, which is 100% canon and takes place 6 years before the events of The Force Awakens, that Ben Solo is still with Luke and has yet to turn to the dark side and become Kylo Ren, meaning Rey has been left on Jakku long before Kylo Ren ever came to be. So if for some reason he's done this, taken Rey to Jakku and left her there, he would have still been very much Ben Solo, and probably just a teenager, not Kylo Ren who may have, at one point, been unable to kill her and instead took her somewhere to hide, from both Snoke and Luke perhaps. You may then think that perhaps Snoke is somehow responsible for bringing her there, but that doesn't make much sense either. Surely if Snoke ever managed to abduct her, knowing her to be a Skywalker like his prized student Ben Solo, he would have kept her close by and attempted to corrupt her and turn her to the dark side. So it would likely have to be someone else who doesn't like Luke and had a huge grudge against him, and for all we know that could be a very long list. But do we know anyone in particular, from anywhere in the new canon at least, that not only would have such a grudge against Luke, enough to kidnap his daughter and hide her from him, but that would also have taken her to Jakku and left her with Unkar Plutt? As a matter of fact, there is someone, Sarco Plank. Who's that, you may be wondering? Well, we first met Sarco Plank in the canon book Weapon of a Jedi, that was part of the Journey to the Force Awakens lineup of books that came out shortly before the movie. It takes place a little bit after the events of A New Hope, and is about Luke being mysteriously drawn to the planet Deveron, and more in particular, to a Jedi temple that is there. In order to reach the temple, Luke enlists the help of Sarco Plank, who is secretly hoping that Luke can unlock the temple, allowing him to plunder all the treasures that he believes wait within. Sarco, who coincidentally enough is known as the Scavenger, is a bit of an expert on Sith and Jedi artifacts, and is known to recover them for high-profile clients. However, things go wrong when the Empire shows up, and Sarco turns on Luke and the two fight, Luke with his father's lightsaber, using it for the very first time in battle, and Sarco with an electro staff that of course was designed to be used against lightsaber wielders. To make a long story short, Eventually, the fight ends when Sarco falls into a pit, but Luke can sense that he's still alive and simply leaves him down there to die or to find his own way out. Okay, so am I really suggesting that Sarco Plank, this character from a book, eventually kidnapped or hired someone to kidnap Luke's daughter to get back at him for this? Yes, as a matter of fact, I am. Is there any evidence to back this up? Yes, actually, there is. First of all, Sarco Plank is on Jakku during the events of The Force Awakens and can even be seen briefly in the movie. This is evidence he knew about the planet and can very easily be an associate of Unkar Plutt's and may have paid him to watch Rey as part of his master plan. Also, knowing a thing or two about the Jedi and the Sith, he may have somehow discovered information, while pillaging a temple perhaps, that Jakku was the perfect place to hide her from Luke, and that's because he knew Luke may not be able to locate her there because of the Sith Observatory on the planet, which we learn about in the book Aftermath Empire's End. This is a similar concept to how Yoda was able to hide on Dagobah because of the dark side cave there. Somehow the close proximity to the dark side power kept Yoda, and possibly Rey, hidden from any who may be looking for them through the Force. Want more evidence? The book Weapon of a Jedi was actually advertised to give clues about the then upcoming movie Star Wars The Force Awakens. And believe me, I know how unlikely this all sounds, that this simple book was supposed to give such a major clue to Rey's origin, but were we supposed to watch The Force Awakens and figure out that Rey had been taken from Luke at some point and left on Jakku by somebody, and then piece together that the one responsible was Sarco Plank, who was even seen on Jakku in the movie? Another curious note is that Hasbro even made an action figure of Sarco Plank, and if you know anything about how Hasbro chooses what characters to make for an upcoming movie, you'll know that they are given suggestions by Lucasfilm more than a year in advance of the movie's release, because it takes a while to design and produce a figure. These suggestions are based on what characters will play an important role in the movie, and will hence be desirable to kids and collectors alike. So, knowing this little tidbit about how Hasbro chooses how to make action figures, is it possible that in a previous cut or version of the film, Sarco Plank had more scenes, more little hints for us to pick up on, but in the end they thought this would be too much of a hint and had the scenes removed? As I've said in previous videos, I think Disney and Lucasfilm have had a plan for Rey's origin all along, but left it as vague as possible so that, if the movie wasn't a hit or people didn't respond to Rey, they could change it up and not have another mess on their hands like the prequels, and I mean no disrespect to the prequels. This was certainly one of their greatest fears with the sequel trilogy, that they'd just spent billions to obtain the rights to Star Wars, and they were going to handle it as gently and as carefully as possible to not only get their money back, but to make plenty of it in the years to come. The last thing you want to do is screw up your first movie and then just keep going along with it. Okay, so that all leads us to the question, just how did Sarco Plank even manage to kidnap Luke's daughter? Well, first of all, he may have hired a very proficient bounty hunter to do it, and I think that because with Sarco seemingly on Jakku so much, it would be likely that Rey would recognize him as the one who had kidnapped her all those years ago, even with how young she was when it happened. This bounty hunter may not have had to kidnap her from Luke either, but rather waited for the right moment when Rey was just with her mother and far away from Luke, making the task obviously much easier. He may have even kidnapped them both, and I suggest this because of how Rey, in the Force vision, was screaming for someone to come back. I just don't know that she'd be screaming for her kidnapper to come back unless they'd also have had her mother on board that ship. It's also possible that before she was left there, Rey's mother had a chance to tell her to stay strong and wait for her because she would come back for her, which explains why Rey is still waiting for someone to come back for her in The Force Awakens, because she has a very vague memory of her mother telling her this. Also in the book, Rey's Survival Guide, she writes this very curious quote, "My name is Rey. I've been here my whole life, scratching out a living with the lost and the broken. I don't know how I got here or why, but I know it was a mistake and somebody out there will make things right someday." To me, Rey seems very confused as to whether or not she's always been on Jakku or if she was left there by somebody. Again, she may have a vague recollection of her mother leaving her behind on Jakku, but can't recall if she was somewhere else first and that her mother didn't leave her behind by choice. I also think there's a chance that Benicio del Toro will be playing the bounty hunter that kidnapped Rey once upon a time, and that at some point towards the end of Episode 8, he will be the one that tells Rey the truth, that she is Luke's daughter, something that Luke himself failed to mention during their training together, which may start to form a rift between father and daughter, or to widen one that may have started to form already between them for other reasons that we'll find out about. Del Toro's bounty hunter character may also tell Rey that he was the one who killed her mother after he dropped her off on Jakku, which could very easily enrage Rey and cause her to go dark side on him, if you will, similar to what she did to Kylo Ren at the end of The Force Awakens. Perhaps she kills Del Toro's character and then goes looking for Luke, and that is basically where and how this movie will end, giving us a nice little cliffhanger going into Episode 9. Okay, now let's try to get into some of the problems with this theory. First, if you're Sarco Plank and you hate Luke so much, why not just kill Rey and be done with it instead of strand her on Jakku? Well, perhaps because he wants to torture Luke, the way he himself may have been tortured if he was captured by Imperials on Deveron after Luke left him behind, which is very possible. Maybe Luke can sense that his daughter is still alive and out there somewhere, but since she's on Jakku, he can't pinpoint her exact location. He may be able to sense her fear and loneliness, which would certainly drive any parent crazy to constantly be feeling this, yet not knowing where your child is to help them. This lines up with the fact that in the book Bloodline, that again takes place 6 years before the events of The Force Awakens, long after Rey would have gone missing, that Leia is having a hard time getting in contact with Luke and her son Ben, because they are traveling to a lot of the parts of the galaxy where it is hard to establish communication, implying they're looking for something or someone in very remote regions. And could this be the reason why Ben Solo turns to the dark side, or one of them? Instead of being trained by his uncle Luke, maybe like he's always desperately wanted to be, that he is instead being carted around the galaxy looking for Luke's long lost daughter and just starts to get tired of it and starts to resent Luke and Rey. This, of course, also explains how Kylo Ren seems to know who Rey is in The Force Awakens, and certainly helps explain that one line from the novelization, "It is you," when she pulls the saber to her over him. He's had his suspicions, but this is the point he realizes that this is Luke's daughter, the one he spent so long looking for. He then offers to train her and show her the ways of the Force towards the end of their duel, because he knows that turning Luke's precious daughter to the dark side will be the best way he can get back at Luke for not properly training him. And speaking of not training him, perhaps this is why Kylo Ren lost his duel to Rey at the end. He didn't receive as much training from Luke as we all thought, and we also know that Snoke has yet to complete his training. He may be nowhere near as trained as we all have assumed, leaving him plenty of room to become way more powerful in these next two movies. Now, another problem with this theory. Why does Luke seemingly give up looking for his daughter after Ben's fall to the dark side and the destruction of his new Jedi Order, and instead go off in search of the first Jedi Temple? Wouldn't Ben's turn make him more determined than ever to find his daughter, fearing his nephew may keep looking for her too? Well, perhaps after Ben's turn, Luke had a vision of himself at what he somehow knows to be the first Jedi Temple, and in it he is shown that his daughter will come to him there if he can only find it and then wait for her. This could also explain why Rey sees an island at night when she feels alone and is desperately trying to sleep. It is either the Force, or more likely Luke, trying to show her where she needs to go. Perhaps once Luke finds the first Jedi Temple, he can connect with his daughter just enough to show her where she must go to find her belonging. This, however, leads to another problem. That being, shouldn't Luke be able to sense Rey the moment she leaves Jakku, if that's what's been masking her from him? Wouldn't he then immediately go to her? Well, perhaps he simply trusts in the Force that she will find her way to him. This would also somewhat mirror what happens in Return of the Jedi, when Vader is told to go to Endor by the Emperor to wait for Luke to come to him. Now it's Luke's turn to be patient, and let Rey be the one that comes to him. Okay, so do I really think this is all possible? That this Sarco Plank character from some book is the missing piece, if you will? That he's the one that had Rey kidnapped? Yes, I do think it's possible, because it's perhaps the simplest answer, which makes it easy to explain to the audience. And most people who watch Episode 8 won't have a master's degree in Star Wars lore and be able to understand something more complex that dips way too far into that lore. In fact, most people who watch it probably only seen The Force Awakens once or twice at the most, and are nowhere near as curious about Rey's parents as I am, or whoever you are watching this video now no doubt is. This is one reason why I've been a fan of the Rey was born on Jakku to insignificant parents theory, because it's easy to understand and makes her relatable to just about anyone. The average audience member will be able to easily understand if someone Luke had once wronged had turned around and kidnapped his daughter once upon a time. Because if I'm right and Del Toro's bounty hunter is the one that reveals the truth to Rey about her father, he could simply tell her that he was hired by some insignificant scum that had a grudge against Luke, one that your father left to die in some hole many years ago, and that he wanted you left on Jakku to drive your father mad, because something about the planet made it so that he'd never be able to find you there, but he'd still be able to feel and sense that you were alive. These two lines could easily explain so much, while bringing up the question to the general audience, what's so important about Jakku, which I think we'll find ourselves on again at some point in Episode 9. Daisy Ridley also said that once we had the answer to who our parents are, it will lead us to more questions. Is this one of the questions it will lead us to? This simple explanation also lets us know the motive for the bounty hunter played by Del Toro to kidnap her, and that the one behind the plot isn't all that important, though us hardcore fans who need to know all the details can then figure out this insignificant scum was Sarco Plank from the book Weapon of a Jedi. Now, you may think that if someone did have Rey kidnapped, it should be for a more grandiose or important reason than this, but the more elaborate you make the reason, the more time you're going to have to spend explaining it in the movie for everything to make sense, and the more likely you are to lose people in the process because the plot is getting too complex. If the average moviegoer or casual fan cares enough to know more about this insignificant scum behind the plot, I'm sure they'll be able to easily find out about it after the movie by reading an article or even watching a video about it. And if you can't be troubled to do even that much, you probably don't care too much about it in the first place. As big fans of Star Wars, I think we sometimes forget that to some people these aren't just movies, one they very much enjoy and are fans of, but still just movies at the end of the day. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think. Does this theory make sense? Or do you think she was simply born on Jakku or taken there and left by someone else for another reason? Honestly, as much as I like this theory, I'd still rather see her be unrelated to anyone we know, but that's only a personal preference. Feel free to agree or disagree, and let's talk some Star Wars. Also, please subscribe to my channel or check out some of my other videos. If you're already a subscriber, then thank you for your continued support. If you want to know when I upload new videos, then hit the notification button or follow me on Twitter. And as always, thanks for watching.